Let's bring in Daniel Wild, energy economist for the Institute for Public Affairs. Dan, thank you so much for your time. How badly have energy prices risen for Australian consumers and businesses in recent times?
Well, we're seeing prices skyrocketing for consumers and businesses by thousands of dollars. As you mentioned, the budget itself committed to a 20 or 30% increase over the next year and at least a 50% increase over the next 2 years. And that will just be the beginning. We've got policies like net zero emissions by 2050, which are supported by both sides of politics, which guarantees at least 6 further large coal-fired power stations, which account for about 20% of our energy generation capacity, are going to close down by the end of the decade. But the problem is we've got nothing to replace it with. Wind and solar are not a like-for-like alternative to coal-fired power. And the key point is that on a mass scale, renewables are experimental. They have not been demonstrated to be able to provide the baseload power. They can go 24/7, rain, hail or shine, to provide the energy we need for an advanced 21st century economy and society. So sadly, Amanda, what we're seeing now with rapidly rising prices is just going to be just the beginning of the pain that is in store for so many families and workers across Australia.
I know it's early days, but has Labor's price cap policy worked for fossil fuels?
No, it hasn't worked and it will not work because, as you rightly identify, if you place a cap on prices, that's going to cruel investment. We're going to see investment not coming into this country. Look, on an economy-wide basis, we've got new private sector business investment already at record lows as a share of GDP, just a little bit above 10%. By contrast, even during the economically hostile Whitlam years, it was around 12.5%. So we're already seeing a massive deterioration to our business investment. That is being driven by red tape, by environmental activism, by rapidly rising energy costs. And we're really lacking the political leadership. We're here in Dubbo going through the Central Tablelands, and a couple of weeks ago we're in the Upper Hunter in Muswellbrook, Gunnedah, Narrabri, visiting communities that are responsible for putting food on the table of Australians and for keeping the lights on. But the message we hear is loud and clear that regional Australians are not being heard by the inner city elites, by the city-based politicians in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne and Canberra, and that is the root cause of the problems that we're facing.
So if price caps aren't the answer, what is? How do we turn this around?
Well, number one, Amanda, is we've got to keep the coal-fired power stations open. Everything must be done by governments at the state and federal level to keep the coal-fired power stations open for as long as possible so that we can avoid the fate of Western Europe, where we're seeing countries like Germany now scrambling to keep their coal-fired power stations open and rebooting old mothballed power stations. We can avoid that by keeping our power stations such as Liddell, which is scheduled to close in a few weeks. It must be kept open. Secondly, we've got to scrap the policy of net zero emissions, and this has to be bipartisan. Net zero means we're not going to have coal or gas, and we're riding head on into renewables, which cannot get the job done. Look, and third and simply, getting nuclear. Get rid of the ban on nuclear power. We've got about 30% of the world's uranium deposits. We need to lift that ban. Places like France have about 70% of their energy coming from nuclear. It's a safe, mature technology used around the world. There's no reason why we can't at least have a look at it here in Australia.
I'm with you on that one. Finally and quickly, the New South Wales election is upon us. Are energy prices a factor that's going to matter at the ballot box, and how do you think that will play out for the major parties?
Well, they're a massive factor. What we've found here is that there is a shadow election taking place west of the dividing range. You've got all the focuses on the inner city and the northern beaches and so forth, but there is white-hot anger out here in places like Dubbo and Tamworth, where we were a couple of weeks ago. It's not just energy bills. What our analysis identified is close to 138,000 jobs would be put at risk across New South Wales because of emissions reduction mandates of both parties. And about 2/3 of those job losses are in regional Australia, in places like here in Dubbo, which, as I say, putting food on the table, earning export revenue, doing the hefty living, the heavy lifting for our economy and our society, but they're being ignored by the inner city elites, again, on both sides of politics.
Thank you so much for your time, Daniel. Hopefully some of that will get heard.